Um, Hi, and welcome to this month's Midwest CASC Science Seminar. I am Alyssa Welch. I am the program manager for the Midwest Climate Adaptation Science Center based here at the University of Minnesota. Big welcome to those of you who are joining us for the first time today. And for those of you who already know our program, special shout out to our speakers, of which we have many today. Quick side note, if you haven't picked up on this already, we'll be using the acronym CASC, CASC for our Climate Adaptation Science Center. That's the quick way to refer to our organization. And you probably got a little pop-up on your screen, but we are recording today's presentation. So adjust your video settings as you'd like. Please make sure you're muted unless you're speaking. And if at any point you have questions, feel free to go ahead and type them into the Zoom chat. For today's presentation, I am delighted to welcome Desi Robertson-Thompson, our new research coordinator for the CASC, and she's going to walk us through our new crop of adaptation research projects that have been funded by USGS. Desi will moderate as each of the project PIs or one of the team members from the projects shares a little bit about their project, a brief overview, and talks about how their project aligns with our science priorities or their major research goals related to the project. But before I hand it over, I'm not advancing the slides. Here we go. I am standing in, if you are a regular attendee of these science seminars, I am standing in for our communications manager, Jess Del Fiacco, today. So please bear with me. Jess does this in her sleep. I do not. All right, here is the map we're looking for. This is our map of consortium partners, of which there are 8. The Midwest CASC is a partnership between USGS and our 8 institutions, which is hosted by University of Minnesota. And I bring this up because collaboration is really important to the CASC. We are a collaboration of our consortium members, and we are part of a national network of regional CASCs, all of which work to produce science that seeks to inform research management that help fish, wildlife, water, land, and people adapt to a changing climate. And the work and research we support centers around the set of research priorities that's specific to our Midwest CASC that I referenced before. We accomplish our mission in several primary ways, including conducting synthesis research on relevant regional priorities, supporting a network of graduate students and postdoc fellows, partnering with our consortium member College of Menominee Nation on a tribal REU program in the summer. We had 2 REU interns our first year and 2 this past summer, and hope to grow that program. We host capacity building workshops and have an annual gathering for our community. Many of you may have joined us at our first gathering in Madison, or our most recent gathering in Indianapolis. And through USGS, funding flows to research projects and partnerships. And that is going to be our primary focus today. So Desi, I am going to pass it over to you now to introduce our speakers.
Great. Thank you so much, Alyssa, and welcome everyone to this month's science seminar. As Alyssa mentioned, I am the new research coordinator for the Midwest CASC, and I'm really excited to be here, and I'm really excited to have the opportunity to introduce this year's projects from the 2023 solicitation. So today we'll be introducing the project leads, both from USGS and also some of our consortium PIs. There are a couple speakers who weren't able to be here, but we're fortunate to have members of their team that'll discuss their projects. Just to recap a little bit of the 2023 solicitation, and just want to give you a quick rundown of some of the numbers. The Midwest CASC received 46 statements of interest, requesting nearly $16 million in funding. Of those, 11 projects were invited to submit full proposals, and of those 11, 5 projects were selected for funding. 3 of these projects came from the consortium and 2 are USGS-led projects. So those are the projects you'll be hearing about today. We will also be hearing about 2 of our directed projects that were also funded this year. So today for each of these projects, we have a single slide, and I'm going to briefly introduce each PI and ask them to come on and briefly introduce themselves and their teams, their partners, and just share a little bit about their project for no more than 5 minutes. We're gonna, because we want to make sure we get through everyone's project. If it goes over 5 minutes, Alyssa might just go ahead and start advancing the slide. So hopefully that's enough time for, I know that there are so many wonderful things about each of these projects, and each one is a seminar in its own. So hopefully we can capture the excitement from this brief little bit of introduction. We would like this to be sort of a meet and greet style seminar. And so I would like for everyone, if you can, please drop your questions into the chat. If you have any comments, and get some dialogue going, that would be great. We will hold off on answering those questions or having the PI answer those questions until at the end, after everyone has done speaking. So, and then of course, PIs, we are hoping that you can share the excitement that we know that you all have about these great projects. So without further ado, Alyssa, if you could advance to, thank you. This first project, this is Chris Cahill's project, and Chris Cahill is an assistant professor at Michigan State University, and he is also the associate director of the Quantitative Fishery Center. His research focuses on the development, use, and simulation evaluation of a wide variety of quantitative tools required to extract ecological signals from applied data and to help inform resource management problems. Dr. Cahill is unable to meet the meeting today because he is busy lecturing, but we are fortunate to have Holly Emke, who is a co-PI in this project. And so just a quick introduction for Holly. Holly is a research fish biologist with USGS Midwest CASC, and her research aims to understand conditions to support self-sustaining inland fish communities in a changing climate across a range of scales. Her work is collaborative and seeks to inform the conservation of inland fishes by working directly with partners to address areas of management concern and develop adaptation strategies. And Holly, if you're able to hop on and discuss this project very briefly.
Yeah, thanks, Desi. I'll be very brief. So excited for this project to get started and to be working on this with Chris Cahill. Chris, as you mentioned, is teaching today, so unable to join us. But we're excited to tackle this project where we're basically going to be developing some models, some simulation models for inland fisheries focused on the upper Midwest, but that will be applicable to inland fisheries broadly, using data from these data-rich scenarios to then apply to see what we can learn to some more data-limited scenarios. So this comes from basically a motivation from the inland fisheries world, where there's lots and lots of lakes and rivers out there, and managers cannot go and physically assess what is going on in all of those areas. And so what are the indicators and metrics that are most informative to detect change and potentially early warning signals of that change? As well as then once we have those models, we'll be talking to managers and trying to run some scenarios to understand how different management decisions affect these different metrics and what we can learn about basically the impact of management interventions on fish populations. So with that, I think that's all I've got. So thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Holly. Really excited about this project. Okay, our next project is titled Shallow Groundwater and Stream Temperature Modeling to Assess the Effect of Warming Temperatures on Cold Water Fish Spawning. And the lead PI for this project is Chance Ford. Chance Ford is a physical science with a physical scientist with the Upper Midwest Water Science Center. He recently finished his doctorate with Michigan State University Hydrology Lab, where he focused on changing snowmelt hydrology in Michigan and the Great Lakes Basin. I'll turn it over to you, Chance.
Yeah, thank you. I'm definitely very excited to start this project. So yeah, I am with the USGS based out of the Lansing, Michigan office. And this project is a collaboration between several of us at USGS, my colleague Howard Reeves, and then a student trainee, Brent Heerspink, who's also a PhD student at Michigan State. And so he's also in the hydrogeology lab. So we'll be working with Anthony Kendall, which is the faculty member that leads that lab at MSU, and then a master's student that just started with us, Noah Bull. And then we're also working with some people from the University of Southern Indiana, primarily Paul Doss, which is a faculty in geology down there, and then a yet to be determined undergraduate student, as well as Dan Hayes from Fish and Wildlife in MSU. So this project really developed because partly out of my dissertation work into snowmelt changes here in Michigan and the Great Lakes. And then Paul Doss down at USI has some groundwater monitoring wells that have been established, some of them going back to 2008 for some research that he was doing for the Manistee National Forest in central Michigan. And so some of these wells have been collecting hourly groundwater temperature and elevation data, like I said, since 2008, so for 15 years now. And temperature data, especially groundwater temperature data, is very sparse. There's not a whole lot out there, especially not with the kind of fine temporal scales that we're going to be working with. And so we're going to be using that data from Paul and developing a coupled groundwater surface water model. So we will be doing at USGS the groundwater model component and ModFlow 6. And then MSU will be in charge of the land surface model using the landscape hydrology model developed by Anthony Kendall. And so we'll have those coupled, and then we'll simulate temperature flows from the groundwater to the White River, which is a river that goes primarily through Manistee National Forest in the kind of west central lower peninsula here in Michigan. We'll be doing that using the MT3D module for ModFlow 6. And so, yeah, we're really going to do this hoping to really look at changes to stream thermal refugia. So these are areas of high groundwater discharge in the stream, and for a lot of cold water fish species, these are critical for things like spawning and just life cycle development. And so we're interested to see what the model says when it's all said and done about where these areas of groundwater discharge are located. Are they moving or reducing in their size in response to potential warming trends? And so we'll do some historical runs for the watershed using Paul's data to calibrate that. And then finally, we're going to do some climate projections using some CMIC6 climate model ensembles to project into the future what those might look like. And ultimately, this is all going to be kind of under the guidance of our advisory panel. We have members from the National Forest Service and Manistee National Forest, Michigan DNR, as well as Trout Unlimited in the region. And so we're hoping to develop this data and provide these to our advisory panel and hopefully aid in their management efforts for the stream in the coming years.
Thank you so much, Chance. Great
Yeah,
project.
thank you.
Our next project is entitled How Prairie Restoration Outcomes Are Impacted by Interactions Between Winter Climate Change and the Timing of Disturbance. And this project is led by Dr. Ellen Gamston. Ellen is a full professor at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, where she leads a strong and energetic research lab, teaches ecology and introductory biology courses, and serves as a mentor to many postdocs, graduate students, and undergraduate student researchers. Her research program is dedicated to understanding the causes of species diversity patterns and the impacts of human-induced global changes on biodiversity loss. Ellen?
Thank you so much. It's great to be here, and we're really excited to have this project launching. I saw at least one of my grad students and postdocs online, so I just want to say that Catherine Chartone and Michelle Homan and Christopher Warnicki are members of my lab that will be actively involved with this. The former two as PhD students, and Christopher is a postdoc. We are also partnering directly with 4 different management agencies that actually house the experiment that we're going to be working on and help us manage it and then manage it within the region. So that includes the prairie enthusiasts in Wisconsin, the Nature Conservancy, the Wisconsin DNR, and Adaptive Restoration, which is a private management company that does a lot of restoration work in the region. So our project is really dedicated to trying to understand the effects of winter climate change, which is the predominant or the force of climate change that has the greatest magnitude so far in Wisconsin and other parts of the Midwest. And it's expected to have unusual effects that might not be as intuitive as you might think. So when you have warmer winters, you actually end up with greater freezing risk because there is less snow. And so the temperatures can have greater fluctuations. And as a result, prairie grasslands and other grasslands throughout the world in temperate regions may have some unusual consequences from that. In the Midwest, over 99% of prairie grasslands have been lost. This is happening concurrently with abandonment of former agricultural land, which offers an opportunity for restoration to be able to rebuild grasslands. And it's really important to understand how management techniques, in particular forms of disturbance like the timing of fire and grazing, might interact with winter climate change in a restoration context to affect the plant communities in the long term. We have the unique opportunity to have a long-term experiment where we have been manipulating the timing of fire in either spring or fall, and we have a mowing treatment in the fall to compare that to, and then a no disturbance treatment. That is, again, in partnership with all of these agencies, and we're measuring the plant community response to each of those treatments to be able to provide guidance to managers about when and how often they should manage their prairies with fire or mowing under a winter climate change, changing winter climate. So I think that's it. If you have any thoughts or questions, I'm happy to take them at some point.
Terrific. Thank you so much. Really, really excited to hear about this one, especially because I'm interested in how that might impact pollinators. Okay, our next project is entitled State Wildlife Action Planning in the Midwest, and it is led by Hugh Ratcliffe. Hugh Ratcliffe is a climate change ecologist whose broad areas of interest include the intersection of climate change and conservation, invasive species, climate adaptation, assisted migration, and wildlife management. And Hugh is an ORISE fellow here with the Midwest CASC. Take it away, Hugh.
Awesome. Thanks, Desi. Can everyone hear me? Okay, good. Unfortunately, my camera seems to have decided to die today. So, but yes, so this project started recently this year. I started in March with the CASC, although I was working as a student contractor with them beforehand. And really the background of this project is that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service gives out state wildlife grant funds every 10 years. And the way that works is states will submit the state wildlife action plans. And when they check off the right boxes in terms of thinking about impacts to species, habitats, et cetera, that they receive grant funding to help with conservation management of non-game species. And this is a really important funding source for a lot of these states' natural agencies. But one of the things that's often missing from these state wildlife action plans is any incorporation of climate change into thinking about impacts to these species. And currently, there is some voluntary guidance for states to do this, but since it's not a requirement, there's often kind of a lack of capacity, not necessarily a lack of interest, but bit of a lack of capacity and sometimes skill set when it comes to certain expertise in the climate change realm to think about how climate change is going to be impacting some of those species of greatest conservation needs. So we reached out to states. Other CASCs have done this as well to try to get a sense of what their needs are and what some of the challenges that they often encounter when it comes to thinking about climate change. And then from that, kind of created this project to help provide some technical assistance for these states, and building off of some work that they had done in the past. The next swap plan is due in 2025, so the last one they did was in 2015. And for the previous iteration, some states used a tool called CCVI, which is a NatureServe tool to help kind of rank vulnerability of individual species. Others did some more descriptive and qualitative analysis. And what we've offered to them for this next cycle, I mean, one of the big challenges is thinking about we have 8 states in the Midwest region. We want to help all of them, and this is kind of this is a pretty massive project. There are different routes you could go down with modeling specific habitats, et cetera. But when we talk to states, they're generally interested in really thinking about impacts to habitats this time around. And so what we're going to end up doing is providing a large overview of the relevant climate stressors, trends, and projected changes for those habitats. And then the main thing will be to come up with a literature review and synthesis of those impacts to habitats and some of the key wildlife species that exist in there. So really going to be compiling what is the kind of current state of knowledge about these systems, and then framing it in a way that they can both put it into their swap plans going forward in 2025, and also can help to inform species conservation and management over the next decade until the next swap cycle comes around. And right now we're in the process of just finished working with states to identify some of the priority habitats that they want to focus on. And currently now I'm kind of digging into the literature on that as well. And then kind of a third part of this project as well is a lot of states are really interested in thinking about specific adaptation actions that they can do for species and habitats. There's a lot of resources out there for them to use, and it's not always easy to wade through that and to kind of match the appropriate ones. And so we'll help with identifying appropriate adaptation actions for these systems. Also working on a training to help with the wildlife adaptation menu, kind of how to use that going forward. So really this is a project geared towards helping these states get climate change into their plans and for 2025, and also kind of build a larger foundation for continuing to incorporate climate change in the future. So yeah, thanks.
Great. Thank you, Hugh. Great. Okay. Our next project is synthesizing responses and vulnerabilities of priority aquatic invertebrates to precipitation extremes across the Midwest. And the lead PI on this project is Jason Bree. And Jason spends time chasing dragonflies and bumblebees for the Illinois Natural History Survey as part of the Prairie Research Institute at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. His research focuses on insect conservation, ecological assessment, and meta-community ecology. Jason has co-edited the recent book, Dragonflies and Damselflies, Model Organisms for Ecological and Evolutionary Research. And he serves on the editorial boards of Insect Conservation and Diversity and the International Journal of I'm butchering this word, and I'm an entomologist, this is embarrassing, odontology, which is also known as the Worldwide Dragonfly Association. So apologies to all odontologists. Jason, take it away, please. And maybe you can correct me on my pronunciation of that word.
No, that's pretty good. And yeah, I always like to throw people off with that word. I think it's a real word. But thank you, Desi, and congrats on your new position as well. And nice to meet you here. And really nice to hear about everybody else's projects, which I realize could have some important implications for what we're trying to do here, and perhaps vice versa. So yeah, really nice, especially the previous project. There's a lot of overlap, I think. And I wasn't aware of these projects until now. So this is good. Thanks, of course, to Midwest CASC for valuing these non-showy, non-pest, non-pollinator invertebrates. And in this case, we're looking at mussels and crayfish and aquatic insects, not snails, despite the photo, but snails are cool too. But we chose these, I guess, for two reasons. Number one is that, as it says here, these are excellent indicators for large-scale environmental change. They're well known in that regard, but also because of this recent effort by the Midwest Landscape Initiative that was mentioned in the previous slide to target these Midwest regional species of greatest conservation needs. So not the state-by-state ones, but this recent effort to get the Midwest SGCN. And so we're trying to get the intersection of these invertebrate groups and climate change, and hopefully with a focus on precipitation extremes, the intensifying and increasingly variable precipitation extremes that are plaguing our region economically and biologically and otherwise. And we have this kind of four-prong approach that it's kind of listed under the goals there. It's captured. We will have an explicit social science component, we hope, and it's like a structured expert elicitation process that'll be led by an environmental social scientist here at the UIUC, a new assistant faculty member named Chloe Wardropper, and her PhD student, trying to look at the threat assessments that were completed during the RSGCN process and perhaps tailoring and refining those as needed. We'll also have a bioclimatic component trying to link species distributions with trending and future precipitation extremes. We'll do some kind of vulnerability assessment where we maybe combine the previous results from the structured feedback, from the distribution modeling, maybe getting traits involved. And then I think the CCVI was mentioned just now too, that we might look into that as well to try and get at vulnerability, and then try to put all this information together to hopefully get us some indicators of droughts and floods and things like that. So things that could be useful in a state freshwater monitoring program, or perhaps like a regional drought early warning system. We think that there's some possibilities there. So we have a number of partners, and including Midwest Landscape Initiative, a number of academic partners for providing data or helping with analyses, and really enjoyed the annual gathering last month in Indianapolis and met a lot of people there. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Jason. As a caddisfly person, I'm excited about your project too. Okay, our next project is mapping climate-informed habitat restoration priorities with multi-sector benefits for 3 upper Midwest ecoregions. And this project is led by Marissa, and I apologize, I am going to mispronounce your name, Marissa Alarian, and you can correct me with that as well. And Marissa is the Nature Conservancy's science director for Minnesota, North Dakota, and South Dakota. And Marissa's work with the TNC focuses on building resilience in grassland ecosystems, designing prairie restorations, and helping to stop grassland conversion. And Marissa, if you could join us. And I don't know why I always struggle with your name. I see it on there, and that H, I think, throws me off.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, the H throws everybody off. It's not just you. It's Allering. So
Allering. Oh, I gotta like put a little ALL on there.
Yeah, substitute an L for the H, and you're good. No, thanks for that introduction. And yeah, we're really excited. Thanks for inviting me to talk about the project today, because I'm very excited to get going on this. And I also want to start out by recognizing my other co-PIs on this project. So Kim Hall and Melissa Clark from the Nature Conservancy, as well as Deepak Ray from the University of Minnesota, are also co-PIs on the project. And as well, all the partners that we have involved in the project that you can see at the bottom of the slide here, and hoping to grow that list through other agencies and tribal Department of Resource Management as well as we go through the project. Because as you'll see at the top, the goal for this project is really it's really about connectivity and improving on the connectivity maps that the Nature Conservancy has created for terrestrial ecosystems across the US, but specifically focused on improving the maps for this region, and then taking it kind of a step further, and really 2 steps further, actually. So, you know, improving, identifying current patterns of structural landscape connectivity that's really better focused on our systems in this area. And then looking to say, all right, where should we put habitat back? So what's out there now is connectivity based on current land cover. But what we want to know is, where could we reforest some land, or where could we put a grassland back that would have the best contributions to improving connectivity for our plants and animals, frankly, across the region. And so, as we know, climate change is going to, you know, have an impact on these species, and connectivity is one of the best strategies that we can think of to help them be able to move in response to these climate impacts. And so, doing some modeling around where should we be reconstructing grasslands or reforesting forests. And then the second piece of that is to say, all right, what are the other co-benefits that we could get with reconstructing these areas? So what are the water quality benefits? What are the pollination service benefits? What are some of the carbon benefits that we can gain? And kind of putting those together, because realizing that in the space that we're in conservation, we don't have the luxury to kind of focus on those things separately. And the more we can identify places where we can overlap benefits to connectivity for wildlife alongside carbon benefits, alongside water quality benefits, the better off we're going to be in deploying resources and getting to where we need to go for biodiversity and thinking about climate change. So yeah, I think that's what I guess I would sort of leave it there, except to say that the partners are going to be really key in this project. And so this co-development and implementing criteria for selecting connectivity is going to be a really key part of the project. And so we're really focused on kind of right now, as the project gets started, kind of identifying those partners and building up that coalition to help us make sure that these products can be as useful to everyone on the other side as well.
Thank you, Melissa. Okay, our next project is entitled A Decision Support and Prioritization Framework for Invasive Plant Management Under Fluctuating Great Lakes Water Levels. And unfortunately, Wes was unable to make it today. So I'm just going to very briefly introduce, give a little background about Wes, and then I'll talk about his project. So Wesley Bickford is a biologist with the USGS Great Lakes Science Center. His research interests lie in wetland ecology, invasive species, and plant microbial interactions. Specifically, he explores new and innovative restoration and invasive species management strategies that use molecular biology, community ecology, and plant-soil interactions as a foundation, with the goal of adding new tools to complement conventional restoration strategies. And so for this project, as background, is that Phragmites australis, the non-local bean, is a challenge for resource managers throughout the Great Lakes region. And some of the recent low water events have really kind of fueled the expansion of Phragmites. And unfortunately, based on some of the models, the water level fluctuations in the Great Lakes basins, it's expected to continue. And so more intense frequency of increased levels, and just more intense precipitation and more extremes in between high and low periods. And so this can directly impact the management of these non-local plants, and obviously the decisions and outcomes. So some of the goals of this project are to update existing habitat suitability indices in a data layer to include these lake level impacts. Also develop a decision support tool to support managers' prioritization of parcels for treatment. For the 2 years of this project condition, they will be working with some partners, including U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the Great Lakes Phragmites Collaborative. All right, we'll move on to next project. I'm sure if there's any questions that Wes that you have for Wes's project, you can field them in, you can put them in the chat, and we can make sure that Wes gets those so he can respond to you. Okay, and our last project to introduce today is assessing and advancing different ways of knowing in climate adaptation in the Midwest. And I'm very pleased to introduce Jessica Hellman, who is the lead PI on this project. So Jessica is the consortium director of the Midwest Climate Adaptation Science Center. She is also the executive director and Ecolab chair in environmental leadership at the University of Minnesota's Institute on the Environment and professor in the Department of Ecology, Evolution, and Behavior. Her research examines the impacts of climate change on natural and human systems, greenhouse gas emission reduction, and climate adaptation. Jessica?
Thanks, Desi. Hey, I'm going to also follow Jason's lead because we have this public venue here to say, hey, congrats on your new job. And we're thrilled to have you here. And really, it's fun to see you in this research coordinator role where interacting with all these PIs and projects is a big part of what you do. And so to trot them out in a public setting is really great to see. So thanks, Desi, very much. And thanks for being here. And also following several folks who've called out their collaborators, I am presenting this project, but this project is a consortium project. So this is a CASC-wide activity. So folks have perhaps heard before, what is the Midwest CASC? It is a collaboration, and Alyssa covered this at the top of the presentation. It's a collaboration between the USGS and a consortium of 8 organizations collaborating to help deliver science and bring to the USGS some expertise outside of the federal government and to augment the excellent work that takes place within the USGS. That's what we call the consortium. So this is a project led by the consortium. So my name is on it because I'm the consortium director. I need to thank Alyssa Welch, who worked quite hard on compiling this project, and all of the PIs who serve on our consortium leadership team and lead the consortium with me. So our motivation here is to enhance and grow several key ingredients in ways that the consortium delivers for the Midwest CASC. One of the most important aspects of this project is to add a new synthesis research topic. So the consortium, one of the main things the consortium does is pursue synthesis research. We have been pursuing or we have underway 3 projects, 2 more that are still being scoped for a total of 5 synthesis projects. And this adds a 6th. And this one is focused on the state of our understanding of and the potential application and learning platforms, if you will, having to do with traditional ecological knowledge in the Midwest region. So we will be pursuing synthesis research centered on traditional ecological knowledge, both serving tribes across our region, principally serving tribes across our region, but also seeking to understand and draw best practices that, say, build on ongoing activities like the tribal adaptation menu that many people are familiar with. This will be a project that will be led at the University of Minnesota, but there will be both a working group and a community of practice associated with the conduct of the synthesis research. And there will be more, we have more scoping to do, including hiring of a postdoc that will be at the center of this. Each of the synthesis projects is led or enabled by a postdoctoral researcher. And that postdoc also has some influence about the specific direction synthesis projects will take. We also, well, I get 2 slides. Desi gave me 2 slides because this is a consortium project and a 4-year-long endeavor. So I'll invite Alyssa, if you could go to the next slide for me, please. Thank you. There are a number, in addition to that emphasis on traditional ecological research or in support of it. This project also enables, and folks will hear more about a Shifting Seasons Summit happening in 2024. More info later. There are also small research projects that are supported through this directed award. So this will enable small groups of people to do needs assessment, to form initial teams, to figure out what types of collaborative research projects are possible. Long before we get to the kinds of sophistication of this funded projects that we've seen in today's presentation, there will be more information about how to access and draw upon those small research projects as well, forthcoming. We'll also be doing more. These funds will enable some more knowledge exchange between practitioners and researchers. Again, more information to come. We will be increasing or enhancing or augmenting this seminar series with a special topics speaker series. In this science seminar, we tend to emphasize work that is going on and for people to talk about what they are doing within the CASC. We intend to augment that with a special topic seminar speaker that will enable us to bring people into our seminars that talk about related topics, adjacent topics, other things that we could learn from and benefit from here in the Midwest CASC to enrich our shared knowledge experience. And we also will be pursuing a formal research evaluation process of what it actually means to conduct synthesis research. Those 6 projects I described previously will have a formal analysis of what has come of them and how that has facilitated knowledge in our region. So it's a big collection of endeavors. Folks will hear more about it over time. There will be many different ways in which people across the CASC can engage and benefit from these different features. Thank you, Desi.
Thank you so much, Jessica, and thanks for the congratulations and bearing with me and my moments of awkwardness here as I learn to, as I stumble through these processes. But as you said, this has been so great. It's so wonderful to hear about all these projects, and I'm looking forward. I'm becoming more and more familiar with them, and just such great work that you all are doing and will be doing. So thank you all for sharing. We have plenty of time here. If anyone has any questions, please go ahead and drop them in the chat. I'm sure the PIs are very happy to answer any questions you have. I'll give it a moment or two. And I see Jessica just added in the chat there to please watch the Midwest CASC newsletter and other communication venues for more information on small projects, additional seminar speakers, and more. So that's a great reminder. Thank you, Jessica. I see Olivia has a question. Olivia?
Sure, yeah, I was wondering if Jason would be willing to come back on and talk a little bit more about his partnership with MLI and maybe a little bit more of the backstory about how that started and where they hope to get with this work.
Yes, hi again, and hi Olivia, and congrats to you as well on your new job. So that's cool. Yeah. Well, yeah, so I was involved with that MLI project as one of the taxonomic specialists to work on, in my case, the odonates. So it was like a 2-year thing that they did from 2020 to about 2022. And as far as like where we're going with that, I mean, I'm going to go ahead and be honest. I worry about trying to do a lot of analyses on these rare listed species because we're not going to have a lot of data points. And I guess they already have attention because they're rare listed. So I was actually going to discuss this with you guys tomorrow in our meeting, but but I'm already rethinking this a little bit. We might need to shift focus a little bit and think about some of these non-rare listed, non-RSGCN species a bit more, ones that are going to have more data, and ones that may be overlooked as climate sensitive and but not have any rare listing. And often those things don't go hand in hand, the climate sensitivity and rare listing. So we might get some useful information simply by maybe we'll try to do both. We'll think about RSGCN and non-RSGCN, and is maybe where I'm going here. But yeah.
Thanks, Jason.
Thanks, Olivia. Thanks, Jason. And I see Jessica has a question. I'm also interested to hear from you a bit more about swap work and that other CASC have pursued. How have the CASC overall been supportive of swap activities? Hugh?
Sure. So this is only really kind of the second iteration of swaps since the CASC have been around. So 2015 was the first time. And some states are working on some other things now that can involve doing some species distribution modeling or some habitat distribution modeling. Other states have done kind of similar literature review dives as well. I think this one is a bit more comprehensive. Something that's different this time around is the focus on habitats in the swap plannings, whereas the swap plans have typically been more species focused. The habitat emphasis is new, so there hasn't been quite the same thing done for that. That's not a very thorough answer. I think it's I can post a resource. I haven't memorized what other states have done, but I can post a resource that kind of talks about that as well, if that would be helpful for people.
Thank you, Hugh. Any other questions out there? I have a question, which is more of a broader question that maybe might apply to all PIs, and I'm kind of interested for everyone, seeing that there is so much great collaboration going on among all these projects and such a diverse group of partners, so many different types of partners. I'm wondering if a few PIs could each share a little bit about how they were able to cultivate these collaborations and partnerships, and if you could offer any advice for others who want to step off in a similar direction. I don't know if I want to pick on anyone, so I'll see if somebody wants to volunteer for an answer before I start picking on people.
Well, oh, Chance, you want to go for it?
Yeah, I can. Let's give a little background on how ours came about. And actually, a lot of it is just folks that I kind of networked with through my graduate and undergraduate career. Paul Doss down at Southern Indiana was my undergraduate advisor, and Anthony Kendall was on my dissertation committee for my PhD. And then obviously the students are just students that are in their labs or programs. Dan Hayes is just someone that is familiar with some of the people in the hydrogeology lab at MSU. And so that we kind of just met him through Anthony Kendall. And then as far as our advisory panel, the Forest Service members came from Paul's research over the years in Manistee National Forest. He's had lots of contact with the folks up there. DNR was Dan Hayes's recommendation. I mean, as a fish and wildlife faculty, he has a lot of contacts in the Michigan DNR. And then Trout Unlimited actually kind of came, some of it through the CASC program. We're on our advisory panel is Jacob Lemon, who's doing a project also on the White River, coincidentally, where they're doing some thermal imagery of drone flyovers. And so I got in touch with him and then met some other Trout Unlimited folk through that connection. But I'm not sure if I have any advice for cultivating those things other than, I guess, go to school. But yeah, it was just kind of all just networks that I've developed over the years that, this project kind of came about, and a lot of people fit we're good fits for the overall project.
That's great. Yeah, I think there's a lot of serendipity sometimes with this, and network. The key word that I heard from you though was networking, and don't be afraid to network, and does fall into place. Marissa, did you have something to add for that?
Yeah, I guess I would just say from my perspective and our perspective, it's or a TNC perspective, it's an ongoing process of relationship development. And I will just say the RFP process itself is kind of a terrible mechanism or a terrible timeline for doing that. And so that's why I said, we're hoping to grow. I am constantly anyway, trying to think about like ways to build those relationships, reaching out and ways to do that outside of like a particular project. Because when it comes to like, when you want to write a grant or you're co-developing something, you kind of have to have some of those relationships in place when you dive in, and knowing that like you dive in and then you might realize, oh, well, as questions start, other people we might need might not be in this conversation. And so it's kind of it seems to me anyway, it's this long-term process of just continuing to cultivate relationships through conversations. And so similarly, I mean, the partners that we brought to the table are through relationships that we have in other ways that we're working on or other projects. And we say, hey, we've got this new thing we're working on. Are you interested? And then trying to be intentional about like reaching out to people in the process and doing that going forward in ways as we see people that we might want to bring in or might be interested or might be intersecting with the work. So yeah, also there's not a silver bullet to like doing this, or just that's a terrible analogy. Actually, there's not a one way to do this. And I think there's just lots of paths to take.
That's great. Thank you.
Can I add on top of Marissa's sentiment, Desi? So I think that's right. The RFP process, and I said, by nature, the way the federal government works, by the way the granting process works, there are letters of intent, and then invitations to submit full proposals. They are short windows of time. You have to know what you're going to do and who you're going to do it with. And to be successful, you have to have really specific objectives, applied outcomes, and strong partnerships with on-the-ground organizations. Those small projects that I referenced cannot and are not directed at generating proposals, but the objective is to step way back and say, if we want to be working together, including in funded research, we need to come back to meeting one another, gathering around common interests, constantly growing our networks, making sure that we're serving our region broadly. And that was a motivation for having small pots of funding that could simply say, if you have an idea, for example, if you have an idea and you're looking for other people who are also working on that idea, here's a small amount of money that you might be able to use to go find those people or figure out what the concerns are. So I think it's just the very beginnings, and there are other creative ways for us to get to know one another, but there's no substitute for getting out and about and looking for other people who share common interests and concerns.
That's great. Thank you so much, Jessica. And I think to paraphrase, you have to put in the work, right? You want these things to happen organically. It shouldn't be an artificial ask just to fit into an RFP, but to really have these real relationships, that meaningful engagement. So there's definitely a difference. Thank you. Well, we are just up. We have about 3 minutes left. Alyssa, I can hand it over to you. I don't see any questions in the chat. I see that Hugh put in some resources to follow based on Jessica's questions, so you can check those out in the chat. But I'll pass it over to Alyssa for a closeout.
Thanks, Desi, and thanks to all of our presenters here today. as the program manager for the CASC, it is very exciting to be onboarding another round of projects, because it not only means the awesome researchers that you see here today, but the project teams and the graduate students and postdocs that are on all of these projects, and to be able to incorporate a new group of folks into this Midwest CASC project and community, and think about all those connections that we are growing through that mechanism is really exciting. So that said, you should have up on your screen